Hello and welcome to this week's look at the world of action and stunts on film and television. And we're on television. If you've listened to the podcast this week, you will know that we are early 80s and a show that I thought was very popular. And having done a bit of a deep dive on this of late, there's a huge amount of interest in not only the character of Mike Hammer, but also the books written by Spillaines, and the television series was very popular. The new Mike Hammer, there was a television series back in 1958, but CBS bought this one up, and it was very popular. So that ran till 1987, and in the meantime, they had a couple of little TV movies. And I want to focus on a couple of those today, primarily because it just gives you an opportunity to maybe look at a slightly bigger picture outside of the standard episode. They were often based directly there in New York, and in these two, there's movement slightly further afield, gives the stunt boys and girls a little extra option for viability, moving stuff around. The stunts, well, maybe they're slightly bigger than they would be, the location's slightly bigger, but it was a hugely successful film. I'd be interested to find out how many people remember Mike Hammer. Stacey Keach, we've featured him before, you remember, on The Executioners, or The Sicilian Cross as it was called. It had about 25 different titles with Roger Moore. So yeah, this is a good show. I've enjoyed looking at this again, and we'll have a look at some of the bits and pieces and regroup afterwards. Here we go. So we'll start with the return of Mike Hammer, and Buddy Joe Hooker is the stunt coordinator on this TV movie, and he's also playing the role of the stunt coordinator in the show because there's a movie being filmed right outside Mike Hammer's window. So here he is, just going through the routine, explaining how to hold the gun, where to point it exactly. There's Hammer in the background. He's watching something else, though. That's Buddy driving the car. She points, she shoots. Hammer then finds that this kid is kidnapped by your man. He chases after them, over the bonnet of the car and out the other way. And a little slow-mo, and then Buddy gets to jump out and do that, what the hell's going on, sort of thing. So now the church fall. There's a fight here. He's being held, and they're trying to take another child. It's all about kidnapping, this particular TV movie. He gets to a certain point, and he's trying to push this guy out backwards through the door. That's the plan. Now, goes out backwards, and they go way over the top. Now, if you note, we'll have another look at that, because you'll note that when they come out, he's just raised him off the floor so he can get over the balcony there. So he doesn't have to get up. He's already up and just lifted over, and then the other double then goes for the vault down onto the ground. There's an additional shot after this, which is them arriving at the bottom of a relatively short set of steps, but nonetheless. And that's that one there. Now, Chuck Tamboro, let's just take a look at this wonderful piece of work. This is the opening shot, and then they both turn, and as they turn, and the helicopter just rises. Oh, that's fantastic. Really nice. It's nicely captured. And of course, the bag on the floor, well, that contains money, right? And the idea is that that's the villain, and he has a little girl with him, and the idea is that they're going to swap the girl for the money, right? Okay, relatively straightforward. But it's not as straightforward. These things never are. So throws his hat down to make sure it doesn't blow off. Of course, they're using that as the camera vehicle as well. So you can see just to the top, there's quite a bit of a drop, but they'll get that. They attach the money, and then the other guy who is in the distance, and he realizes that's not his daughter, and he's shouting at Hammer, "It's not the kid, it's a different girl." Running, and then Hammer realizes, right, let's get the money back. So that's the key. Now Chuck's got to come along here. He's got this hanging below, right? This guy gets shot for his troubles. Bang, there we go. And then Hammer says, right, you're for it, Sunshine. Lets off a couple of shots, but most importantly realizes he wants to get the money back. So at this point here, then this is Chuck fooling about with it. This is the rope going down, and you'll see that in this shot it's hanging out of the door. I suspect that it may actually be attached underneath underneath the body of it for the longer shots. But this is great, being dragged along, and then it's dragged right over the edge, whoom, in one foul swoop. That's fantastic. So he's not hanging onto that rope. He is attached separately with safety cables on there, making absolutely certain that he's safe and sound. Now, of course, the chopper could get a little lower, and this may be before throat mics were brought in so that the performer could stay in contact with the pilot. But I suspect that there's an additional stunt guy in there, or a co-pilot, who is giving information saying, yeah, no, he's good. No, come over this way a bit, come right a bit more. And it's a very, very impressive little sequence. And again, for saying it's a TV movie, but they've put a great deal of work into this. And so that's the end of that little sequence there. That guy's sadly done for. More Than Murder was an earlier movie, right? There's a gym fight at the start here. I quite like this. So he dives in here, finds your man, who's a big fella, right? And then gets sort of, a good old fight goes on here. Whack. And it's just as the doubles kick in. These punches are very good. They're landing over the top. That's the stunt coordinator. That's Richard Butler. And he does a couple of bits and pieces in this picture. And then we're going to get our own back here as well. Bang, thrown down on the table. And then there is a moment, and it's very difficult to find a double when you're that big. But of course, when you're that big, it's Billy Lucas who's doing the doubling here for this guy. And because it's very difficult to try and find a double that fits. And if you find a double that's the right height, then that's the start. Obviously, he's got to sell the rest of it. These punches are being sold very well, and receiving these punches is very good too. Look at his right hand. He just brings his right hand to a fist and then gets coshed by your man who comes out through the door. It was going so well. This is the car turner I was telling you about. So the car is coming down the road towards him, and they're hiding on the pavement because it's gunfire, right? So he says to the girl, stay there. He goes out in the street. The car then does a big U-ey and comes back this way, and he's determined he's going to get this shot done. And he fires a couple of times into the windscreen, and it's the timing of everything as he just goes now. And then, look, whoa, right up. So he's standing practically right in front of that little concealed ramp that's the other side there, enough to turn him over. Yeah, good stuff, that. Good stuff. And that, of course, is Richard Butler again, who's getting his name about at the moment and then gets shot. So that's the type of stuff we're up against. It's pretty good. I like this. Now, this is onto the ferry. This is the ferry sequence at the end, right? He's got to jump here. Oh, I think he'd have made that normally, but he has to miss and just drop his legs down. Dip them into the water, but manages to get himself out. But this is the bit. The next part is the interesting part. There are a number of passengers, presumably stunt people, but it's not credited as such. And there is this guy here, John Corran, right? He gets elbowed and then does this extraordinary fall back, big somersault, and then lands, twists in the air and lands practically on his face. That's a big fall. you know, and I would expect that to be a stunt performer. But there's nothing there. I can't chase anything up because I'm struggling to find the details of it. But it's worth looking into if anybody has any further information. So if you know who that is, then please drop us a line or put the comments at the bottom there, and we'll find out what it was. But it's a fairly decent fall, and you know, for saying that he's playing a passenger and he's down as an actor, not as a stunt performer. I was wanting to see if maybe he got a bit of history in stunts as well, but so far we've drawn a blank. And there's now Vic Magnotta, there's the policeman, and he gets shot as well. These are all sort of New York stunt guys. And then he manages to chase him round. He's going to try and take her up to the top is the plan. Hammer wants to cut her off. He's been nicked. He's got a nick there in his arm. And he says, right, they've got to go this way. He's telling everybody to get down. They're all trying to stay out of the way. And then meets them on the way up there. And she gets shot. And this is, look at the way she just bends her left knee down and then lands in the step, allowing then momentum to take her down, sliding down a couple of steps. It's a nice little fall. It's quite a concealed staircase. Banisters both sides. It's quite tight. So manages to get to the bottom nicely. But again, I'm struggling to find who the performer was. We'll get to the bottom of it. He gets shot over here, and pretty much the dialogue is based around the guy going, well, I'm losing my grip, give me a hand. And Mike Hammer says, I'll wait. It's no problem. I'll wait. And so as he falls, he's going to land on one of the vehicles below, and which is presumably got detonators in the roof section, as you will see as he comes down, loses the grip, boom, and then he goes, and there, and as he hits the thing, bang, and off they go. And I think it's pretty good going. I think it's really, really pretty good. There we go. Jobs are good. So you see from that, there's a whole bunch of bits and pieces. They've tried to... The car turnover, let's look at that firstly, right? The car turnover it's very clever, but it's really, really tight. I would love to know, because the camera angle changes, and I'd love to know just how close that was, because the ramp right in front of the stuntman, who has to then dive to his right across the bonnet hood of the car, so he's out of the way, so that when the car comes up, then it flips and goes down the street. It's really tricky. I'd love to know how big that gap was, but from the angle that we were looking at it, it looked as though they'd left it late enough. You know, I mean, it's still very, very impressive to watch. The fall from the top of the boat, ferry, cruiser, whatever you want to call it, John Corran, that's who's credited as an actor. I can't find any recollection of him as a stunt performer. I thought, well, maybe he was diving, connected with diving in some shape or form. Nothing. I've drawn a blank. But if anybody knows that, obviously I've put the guy's face on there, John Corran, and it's very clearly him. And when he gets that shoulder and disappears over the side, so it's a big fall. You know, as I say, I was expecting it to be a stunt performer doing it, but if it is the actor, well, I can't find any record of him at all. IMDb has that as his only credit, so it would be worth looking at if anybody knows any further information. But it's nicely done, and evidently he walked away or swam away, as the case may be. But really, for me, the star of the whole thing is Chuck Tamboro, with this magnificent work that he's doing from a helicopter point of view. And I didn't really realise how complicated it can be, because you're adding additional weight to the aircraft. If you see when the guys are hanging on the skids and they're having a fight, well, it's a lot of weight on one side, and you have to then try and compensate by having ballast in, an additional stunt person or somebody to weigh that up so there's a bit more stability. And that may have been the case here, but certainly a rope hanging below the chopper, the bag of money on the end of it, and Mike Hammer grabs hold, and then he's lifted, dragged along the floor, firstly, which is the first part of the game, then dragged along the floor and then over the edge of the cliff. And it's really impressive to see that done. So again, and that moment, that opening moment where the two actors turn and the chopper just arrives behind them over the cliff, it's very, very good. Chuck Tamboro, one of the greats as far as handling helicopters, not only for stunt flying but also as an aerial coordinator. And check him out on IMDb. His credits are huge, massive quantities of credits on there. So there we go. That's Mike Hammer. If you're not familiar with it, many, many episodes on YouTube. Go and check those out. And a little, over there, a little thumbs up. Next week, we will be back with more of the same. We've got a couple of great interviews coming up over the next few weeks. Can't tell you too much about those, but there are some terrific interviews coming up, so that'll be good. And if you don't already do so, don't forget to subscribe. All the information will be down here. Click the notification thing and you'll get all of that. And don't forget to... in the notes, there's the Linktree link, and that'll take you to all of our social media and indeed the podcast as well. So click on that, subscribe, and we'll do it all again next week if that's all right with you. Until then, bye for now.